Hi everyone, welcome to Brooks River in Katmai National Park, Alaska. This is live footage of brown bears fishing for salmon at world famous Brooks Falls. My name is Mike Fitz with explore.org, and today we're going to talk about brown bears and salmon and update you on some injured cubs, some other events that have been happening on the bear cams recently. I want to introduce you to my co-hosts today, got two of them along for the ride. First, let me introduce Naomi Boak with the Katmai Conservancy. Naomi, how are you?
I'm okay. Happy to see a lot of bears.
Certainly, quite a few bears for the end of July, but that seems to be the way the pattern is trending over the last several years. And I also want to welcome our other co-host, Susan Contreras, park ranger with Katmai National Park. And Susan, you've been along the river, hopefully enjoying these bears in person as much as you can over the last couple of weeks.
Yes, I have. Hello, everyone. These bears are incredible, and it's amazing to see their growth. They are just expanding, and so it's quite a treat to be able to observe these bears in their success towards, up to this point in time, and in their success towards preparing for hibernation.
That's true. If you just started watching the cams this week, for instance, you may not think that the bears have gained a lot of body fat over the last month, but they certainly have. So there's a lot of them that are looking quite pudgy at this point in time. So we're looking at our main Brooks Falls camera right now. A lot of different bears at the waterfall. So we're going to be talking about who they are. We're going to be talking about how they interact with one another. We have different cameras to rely on as well to give us different perspectives on the river. So this is the Falls Low camera. So this is located where the Brooks Falls main camera is located, just at a lower perspective, a bird's eye view of the river. That fatty down at center bottom, that is 909. She's an adult female. She is, we joked about this right before we started, how she is, looks like she's well on her way to being a Fat Bear Week contestant this year. So she is looking quite pudgy. Maybe we'll talk about her later in the broadcast. We have the Riffles camera about 100 yards downstream of the falls. We have a camera looking upstream from the bridge at the river mouth. So this is our Riverwatch camera. And then we have our Cat's River View, which looks downstream from the bridge out towards the mouth of the river in Naknek Lake. We have Dumpling Mountain. If something comes up, we can go to the wilderness perspective from the top of the mountain. This camera is maybe about 2 miles straight line distance from Brooks Falls. Amazing scenery from the top of Dumpling Mountain. And then we also have an underwater camera as well. So if there's some fish hanging out or a bear hanging out on the underwater camera, we might head there as well. As I like to do at the beginning of every broadcast, though, I hope there's always a few new people joining us who maybe don't know where Katmai National Park is. So let me introduce you to its location. It's located about 300 miles southwest of Anchorage, Alaska, on the Alaska Peninsula. And Brooks River is a pretty short river. It's only about a mile and a half long or so. And from this perspective, it flows from left to right. Brooks River is bisected by Brooks Falls, so about at the halfway point is Brooks Falls. Along with our webcam partner, the National Park Service, explore.org hosts and maintains several webcams along the river. The signal from those webcams is either sent directly through a satellite internet connection to the rest of the world, or it is hopped off of a couple of radio repeaters on Dumpling Mountain and then sent to the small town of King Salmon and to the internet from there. King Salmon is where the park headquarters is located. Looking back at Brooks River, though, the lower half of Brooks River, you can see Brooks Falls on the left. That's where our falls camera is located. The falls generally looks, or that camera generally looks at Brooks Falls, but occasionally it'll look downstream. Our Riffles camera is, again, located about 100 yards downstream of the falls. It'll look across the river and upstream towards the falls. Then our Riverwatch camera located at the bridge, looking upstream from the bridge over the meanders and oxbow of the lower Brooks River area. Our underwater camera pointed downstream, attached to one of the pilings on the bridge. And then, of course, we have, to bring the last one in, outlined in purple here, that's our Cat's River View camera, named after our long-time lead camera operator, Catherine Green. So through all of these cameras, we have a really great perspective on much of the lower half of the Brooks River. We might try to answer a few audience questions that were submitted in advance too. So thanks to everybody who does submit their questions through the Ask Your Bear Cam question form. You can find a link to that in the partner tab on the left-hand side of the page below the live camera feed if you're watching on explore.org. Or if you're watching on YouTube, just ask a moderator for the link to that form. We don't have time to answer everyone's questions, unfortunately, but I do read them all eventually. So thanks to everybody who submits questions there. Let's get back up to Brooks Falls, though, because there's plenty of activity happening on the lip of the falls. We have looks like two young bears, maybe a pair of sisters, and another bear, an adult female up there. We got 909 sitting down below us, pointing her big, healthy butt towards us. And then a bunch of adult males vying for space elsewhere. Susan, I guess I'll start with you real quick because you've been able to go to the falls on a regular basis. What's just been what's stuck out to you over the past few days?
It's been busy. It has really been busy, highly populated with not only the adults and the families, but a lot of subadults. And so the subadults, it's very interesting to watch them because they'll be kind of like in the lower right hand area of your screen, so they're within proximity of the falls, but they know to keep their distance, and they kind of group up with each other, and if one is fortunate enough to get to scavenge a carcass, they all are very interested and sometimes try to get a piece of that salmon. This morning I was at the falls, and there was a family group there, a sow and her two cubs. They probably are 2.5-year-olds, if I would guess, based on their size, and they were very successfully fishing, mostly by securing the fish from the salmon from other successful fishers. They were kind of they were an imposing group of 3, and so they just kind of took liberties with helping themselves to salmon that was caught by others, and I even had a chance to see Grazer up there. Grazer was up there fishing and had some interesting interactions with other bears. I wasn't sure whether the others were trying to take a salmon from her or if she was trying to take a salmon from the other bear, but there was a moment there of some growling and interaction.
Yeah, and we can see right now just a lot of bears waiting for the few salmon that maybe are still migrating through the river. A bunch of adult males, Naomi, it looks like they're just they're kind of tolerating each other for the jacuzzi, that big plunge pool below the falls. But they're also wary of something downstream. I wonder what we might be able to see that's coming in that
I was
direction.
just looking at that too. They're not happy. Someone's coming from downstream. They're being very wary of that. And 909, she's very watchful. She doesn't get fat by getting into trouble.
Yeah, so I cut to the riffles cam to see if we could see if there was, one of the real big adult males approaching from downstream. I don't see it. So I'm wondering what kind of got those bears' attention. That is a little odd to me. They look downstream like, hey, something big is coming, but something big did not come. So yeah, that's curious.
Went along the shoreline and
Sure.
you can't see it. But 909 looks like she's been able to fish on the lip a lot, because when she can do that, like her mother and her sister, she's really good at fishing on the lip.
Yeah, she's a pudgy bear. Let's introduce her real quick. We'll get back to live footage in just a second, but this is a photograph I took of 909 early last July, so in 2023. I recognize her by her really kind of blonde, poofy ears, kind of uniform brown coat. But if we get back, when we get a chance to see her on the falls low cam, we'll see that her coat, it's just not the weather today. She's actually shed a lot of that early summer fur, and she's growing in her winter coat already, so she's much darker in appearance, but pretty pudgy overall. Um, she is actually related, Naomi, to the two. Looks like the two younger bears that are on the lip of the falls, the two that are kind of closest to us up there. Not she is their cousin or their aunt. But anyway, they share the same lineage. I can't remember, but I think that might be a pair of kids from 128 Grazer who are now on their own, 428 and 429.
I think it's cousins. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I
Yeah, I
don't
should
know.
have looked that up ahead of time.
We have to get an ancestry expert here. So
Yeah, our
it's
bear camp
interesting
fans
to
have done they have done the family trees. I just can't remember off the top of our
yeah.
head, but yeah, the subadults are doing it. Those young bears are finding this opportunity right now. There's not a lot of competition for the lip of the falls, and they're waiting for that chance to practice their craft.
Learn from mom. Mike, I
Earlier
have a
this
question.
morning, when I was
Go ahead, Susan.
go ahead, Naomi.
All right, I have a question about the fact that recently we've been seeing more young adult bears like we are now in the jacuzzi in that area than we've been seeing the large, more dominant bears. And I'm wondering why.
Yeah, it's interesting to consider. I think a lot of those so-called young adults aren't so young anymore, and they're pretty sizable. So I think they're able to compete for that spot more. We're not necessarily we don't see 747 there right now. We don't see Chunk in there at the moment. 856 isn't as dominant as he was in years past. So I think there's just maybe more opportunity for them. But the hierarchy amongst those big adults is kind of unclear because those medium-sized adult males, those younger adult males, it's a little unclear because they seem to be very tolerant of one another. We're not really seeing them forcing each other out with the same frequency that you will see like a bear like Walker, for instance, or Chunk, for instance, displaying. So I think that opportunity is available for them, and they're kind of at that age range where they're just not feeling like they need to assert themselves nearly as much.
Right. And not all bears do assert themselves. I mean, we've seen plenty of adult bears that do very well and just they don't confront or get confronted very often by the more dominant bears. I mean, 89 Backpack is a really great example of that.
Yes, and he was around earlier this summer, looking really healthy, looking really good. It's great to see him along the river, and he's one of those bears that just doesn't happen to get into too much trouble. He seems to kind of mind his own business, so sort of Otis-like in that perspective.
Yes.
Susan, I think you had a comment or a question earlier.
Yes, I was just going to say that Grazer's former cubs, now subadults, they were out there fishing this morning, and I believe it's hard for me to tell the difference, but I believe it was 428 was quite successful, catching one salmon after another, and so it's so. She's very successful with her fishing techniques, and they were having a lot of luck. And I see here, I don't know, are these subadults grouping up together?
You could easily be fooled by this, but yeah, this is a little bit of a family reunion. So 909 moving off camera right now, and that's 910. That's her sister moving to the left. Again, our internet just stuttered a little bit there, but then that's her two cubs, 910's two cubs right there. So that was really interesting to see. Naomi, I think you were about to jump in there.
Yeah, no, I was about to say that it looked like a family reunion with 909 and 910 and the now adopted cub of 909's. And some play. That's good. That's a good sign.
And over by 910 and her family, there was a sow and a cub. Do we know who they are over at the left? I'm sorry, the right hand side. Yeah, the cub was kind of laying on the sow's side. That right
Yeah, I'm not sure.
there.
Yeah, it looks like a couple of bears playing. Can't quite tell from this perspective. Maybe we'll get a better look later in the broadcast. But that, yeah, it does appear that like that could be a mom and an older cub there. Certainly not a first year cub. I know 806 has been around recently. She has a single cub. The color from this distance doesn't seem to right to be 505. But yeah, bears, at the moment aren't catching a lot of fish, but we know that when they do, they tend to be a bit more energetic and a bit more tolerant of one another, a bit more playful for one another. So some of these bears may have just some extra energy to burn off. Sometimes bears play when they're bored, even if they're hungry as well. So we know that from polar bears. Like there are times of the year where we'll see polar bears playing, not in Katmai because there's no polar bears in Katmai, but in other parts of North America, and they come to shore, they're waiting for sea ice to return so they can go out and hunt on the sea ice, and they're just kind of there, and they're a little bored, and they just see this other bear, and they just start playing with one another. So they can do it in the absence of food. We know that for sure. But if you are well fed, you are definitely going to be more tolerant, and I think a bit more friendly with your comrades on the river.
And is that chunk in the office? Am I seeing that correctly? There's a bear in the far end of the falls.
Yeah, hard for me to tell. It's
Across from
pretty far
the
away. What do you
Yeah,
think? What do you think, Naomi?
I can't tell. It's a very dark blob. It's the blob
Yeah,
bear.
the lighting's not helping us right now. It's just kind of like an overcast day, kind of flat light. So sometimes we do end up confusing the bears. There are some bears in the lower river. We haven't really gone down there quite yet. So I want to just jump to one that's walking away from our camera right now. It had been grazing on a little bit of vegetation. Bears come to Brooks River to primarily feed on salmon, but we know that bears are omnivores and they like to eat a wide variety of things. So occasionally you will see some bears munching on some vegetation here. And Susan, I think when you walk back and forth across the bridge, you can, it's one of my favorite views anywhere because you get to see, that you have this 360 panorama. And sometimes you get to see bears in all directions.
It absolutely is. In fact, walking to work in the morning or going home in the evening is such a pleasure because as you walk over that bridge, more often than not, you are able to see bears on either side. They're either making their way from that oxbow area where coming out from the falls and they're just looking for fish. They kind of stroll through the water and usually they're upright. You see their head bobbing in and out of the water. They sit and they catch fish and they eat it right there. Over towards the Naknek Lake area, that side of the bridge, you typically see either subadults or families, and those families like the spit. You'll see sows there with their cubs, and they like hanging out at the spit, and you'll often observe them, playing with one another. It's really a calm, peaceful area for these bears, and it's safe, and they enjoy that.
It's a bit of a different scene than at the falls, Naomi, where you get to see a lot of bears competing for fishing spots because there's so much more space in the lower river area. But if you want to catch fish on a day like today, when there's not a lot of salmon moving upriver, then it seems like you really do have to compete for access to productive fishing spots at the falls.
Yeah, we're seeing some of that on the lip right now, and there was There was a lot of that earlier. There were two family groups up there. And yeah, it's very different than the lower river. I love watching on the lower river. And I must say that when it's a nice day, I use that lower river platform as my outdoor office and just watch bears. It's really great. So there's the bear in the office. Can you it's not junk, I don't think. Mike, can
Um,
you
no, no, it's
figure out who that
not quite big enough. Same color. I think it's one of our, the mix of younger adult males that are here. The one on the left is 801. I think the one that's standing behind him with the blonder ears is number 230. And then I know 503 was around before. I don't think that's him against the far wall. So I think that's one of probably, yeah, I'm not sure who's against the far wall there. But we'll see these bears just like we will with the jacuzzi area. We'll see bears in this vicinity do-si-do with one another, just kind of filling into these micro niches where it's like this. It's like a cold war almost between them. It's like, I want to get fat, I want to get big, and as long as you stay on your side of things, we'll be cool. But if you make a move in my direction, then there could possibly be trouble. Now we have 801 again. I don't think he kind of on the left there. I don't think he really likes where he's at right now because he's circling. He's facing different directions. I think he would rather fish in other places, but it doesn't look like he wants to confront those other bears.
Well, and the other bear doesn't want to 801 in his space. I mean, they did that just as you were describing that kind of behavior, Mike. You cued the bears. It was great.
Yeah, it's awesome when I can do that. Some of these younger guys, we get used to them being sort of like happy-go-lucky subadult bears. They're not fully mature yet, or young adults, and they're still growing. But all of a sudden, they come back and they're just giant. Like the guy who's in the middle of our frame right now, maybe that's number 99, and he's a pretty big bear. I think over the next few years, we'll see these bears like 230, like 99, like 912, 807, 907, and a bunch of others. They're just going to get really, really big. And I think that means the repercussions for that for other bears is going to be substantial, especially some of the older, more dominant bears right now. And it looks like 801, again, he did a great job there. He moved to where he needed to move, caught a salmon, and now is enjoying his reward.
Yeah, experience pays. I think another bear to watch who's really grown a lot in the last 2 years is 164, who is an inventive bear, figured out a new place to fish right in the falls. But he is huge now.
Yeah, they sort of just blow up. I remember, one year 747 just came back, and I was like, "Who is this monster?" I was like, "Oh, that's 747." It's just like it seemed like he just swelled to like double his body mass one year. So yeah, when you're well fed and you're a young male, you're still growing quite a lot. And Susan, I know you're going to talk about, you and Naomi have a live chat about subadults and younger bears tomorrow. Sometimes people wonder about the younger bears, and they think, are they well fed enough? They don't seem to be eating a lot of salmon, and it's really interesting to see how they can, again, adapt their diets to make a living on alternative foods besides salmon. Younger bears, the smaller the bear, as long as they're not a first year cub, they can actually gain weight on vegetation at this time of the year. So I find the behavioral adaptations of younger bears to make a living quite fascinating.
Yes,
Yeah,
this one right here is really enjoying that vegetation, and when berries come out, I think that's going to be another source for them, and roots, and they're just going to be able to diversify their diet and supplement as well. And it's they're great scavengers. They watch for carcasses coming down those falls and into the riffles area. So they've got various opportunities here.
and it's coming up to berry season. August is berry season.
And that
They're
combination
going
of
to enjoy.
berries and salmon is really like the ultimate bear diet. That is like if they can eat, if they can find both of those, they gain weight faster than any single food alone. So yeah, it's a pretty rich landscape for bears in Katmai, and that's why there's, you know, at last estimate more than 2,000 bears thought to inhabit the park. The park is working on a new estimate, I believe, so hopefully we'll get some information about that in the next few years or so. So, you know, at the falls, some things have shifted around. Again, we were looking at 801 eating a fish right before we cut away. But we have one of those younger but mature adult males in the jacuzzi right now. And I think, Naomi, he's one that really has a potential to become a super dominant bear in the near future. And that's number 503.
Yeah, he is really big. He's got long legs, and I think he's a very um, social bear. In that he's very adept at reading other bears, and he's very social. Although he's becoming a little less tolerant of other bears. When he was younger, and we're still seeing it now, a lot of young bears would gather around behind him and looking for the largesse of 503. Um, but 503, for those of you who don't know, was separated from his mother, 402, when he was a yearling, and was adopted by Bear 435 Holly. And Holly, I've seen Holly um, purposefully go towards a bawling cub that was not hers. So I think that was part of it. But I also think because 503 is a very smart bear socially, I think that had something to do with it too. Bears are individuals, their personalities are different. And that's why I think we see different survival techniques from different bears.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not the fact that, you know, there's just bears around that allow, you know, so many bears to fill the landscape. It's that they can partition themselves into these individual niches depending on their dispositions, their personalities, their individual behaviors, all of the tricks that one bear might learn that another bear doesn't quite know, for instance. So yeah, we're really seeing sort of like these general uh, omnivores fill into these and partition themselves into these different niches depending on their own uniqueness, essentially. And I think that's one of the things that's really fascinating about watching bears at Brooks River. So, you know, with the subadult who's still standing on the lip of the falls, either 428 or 429 right now. Again, her sister moved away. You know, you're not going to see her behave in the same way as 402, who's standing, who's the bear also on the lip right now, standing just right behind her. And you can do that down the line with with all of the individual bears that we see at the river.
Yeah. And it's interesting because those two bears are experienced lip fishers. I mean, 402 is a terrific lip fisher, and she's had more litters than any other sow on the river. She just this year, just liberated and made her last cub independent. And but she brings her cubs onto the lip of the falls, and 428 and 429, who were grazers' cubs, benefited from that education by grazer, and you see them having that success on the lip.
And so 503 with a catch here, making it look easy. Just have to be a little bit patient to be able to do that. I can recognize him. You know, he kind of has a blocky muzzle. He does. I think he does look like his mom. And again, his mom is on the lip of the falls right now. So I think our falls low view is a little bit behind because right now we don't see 503 eating his salmon. But mom is up on the lip of the falls right above him. His biological mother, that is. Again, he was separated as a yearling. He was adopted, as Naomi said, about with by Holly. But yeah, he this is certainly, I think, a bear to pay attention to this year and in the near future, because he is so big. He's able to sit in the jacuzzi quite easily right now, resist the force of water. He's really tall. He's really long. He just hasn't filled in that body mass yet that we see with some of the older, more dominant adult males. But I think that stage is coming for him, maybe next year.
Yeah.
Again, you're looking for a large bear to come back. This could be it.
Well, and he's only 11, right? So
Right.
he's going to fill out more.
It was interesting in the clip how he was, how just when we saw him catch that salmon, how he had it by the head. And I noticed that some of these bears, I don't know if it depends on how they catch the salmon, but some will bite off the head and start from the top and go downward, whereas others will hold them with the head towards the river bottom and pull up forward and skin them, do the high grading. And then I've seen them, where they'll eat the salmon eggs out of the fish, and then sometimes let it go at that point. It goes down into the lower river, and some subadult catches the rest of the meal. But I did see one of the bears just eating the entire thing, the entire salmon yesterday. Started with the head and went all the way down to the end of the fish and ate the whole thing, entrails and all.
So is that 806 and her cub that we see on the right? I think so.
Yeah, I think so. And again, she's a mother with a yearling cub. She'll sometimes fish the falls. Of course, she's not on there, or excuse me, fish the lip of the falls. She's not there right now, so maybe she's kind of looking for a scavenging opportunity. And that's one of those things that 503, as you were saying, Susan, facilitates, because he didn't eat the entirety of the last fish that he caught, so I think he's having a fairly decent day fishing. And then you see these other bears kind of looking for any leftovers that they can pick up from him, because they maybe don't have the body mass or the dominance to hold their position in the jacuzzi long enough to catch fish there regularly.
I love this interaction with the cub and the sow right there in the center.
Yeah, when sows have a single cub, they'll play a lot with that cub. When there's more than one cub, the siblings tend to play with each other a lot. But the sows with singletons really make up for that, and that cub is just play harassing mom.
Well, if you joined us a little bit late, thanks for tuning in. If you're here from the beginning, thanks for listening. My name is Mike Fitz with Explore.org. I'm talking with Susan Contreras, a park ranger at Katmai National Park, and Naomi Boak with the Katmai Conservancy, brown bears and salmon at Brooks River. Right now, though, I think this may be a good opportunity to talk, give everyone some updates on some situations with some bears that we've seen recently at the river. Yesterday, Naomi, Susan, and Ranger Sarah and we spent a lot of time talking about Grazer and her cub, because we're not going to recap the whole thing. If you want to find that recap of the situation, then ask a moderator for the link to that chat from yesterday. But basically, Grazer's cubs go over the falls. She's on the lip of the falls. She has first-year cubs. They go over. She's really concerned because there's a bunch of bears downstream. One of them ends up attacking one of her cubs. This is a bit towards the end of that incident. Grazer successfully defends her cub, but not before the cub is injured. And this situation, again, was in a way fascinating to watch, extremely stressful and emotional for people to watch. But Grazer is a fierce, courageous mother bear. Her cub is still alive and seems to be improving, actually, over the last few days. Susan, you were able to go to the falls this morning, and you said that you saw the cub. So can you give us a little bit of an update? This is footage from yesterday, so not live footage, or not footage of the cub from today. We haven't seen it today, but you just want to walk us through what you saw this morning.
Absolutely, yes. So when I was there, going through that last gate that you go through, that last door before you approach the Brooks Falls platform, over to the left was Grazer, and she was with one of her cubs suckling, and it turned out that that was the non-injured cub, and over a little bit to the left of where Grazer was reclined and the other cub was suckling was the cub that was injured, kind of nestled in the grass. I did not see the cub myself, but was told by others that had been there that the cub was reclining in the grass. So it turns out that as time progressed, Grazer goes and fishes, and the non-injured cub is kind of following her, and then comes back, and before you know it, you see this cub on its rear legs, and it turns out to be the injured cub. So the injured cub moved itself via the force of its two rear legs standing upward, and was going forward in the direction of where Grazer had gone earlier. She was fishing at the falls, and so this cub would take a few steps and then kind of stay still, kind of like in a squatting position, and then take a few steps more, and it was sniffing at the ground, like to verify that this was where the path that Grazer had taken, and would just progress like that, taking steps forward, always upright. Didn't really, on the time, there was one point where it did kind of try to get on all fours, but you could tell that it was maybe those two front paws didn't make contact with the ground. It seemed like there was no contact there, but that the cub was using the force of its two hind legs to propel itself over, and it made it over to where the vegetation is to the left of where the fishing ladder is. So, and that was the last that I was able to see of that cub as it made its way forward, and it wasn't really making that much noise. Every now and then it would make like what I would characterize as a calling out sound, but it definitely was a very different kind of vocalization than what I was hearing the few days after the incident. And so the cub had its mouth open, was kind of looking around, and seemed to be making progress. So I am going to continue with my feelings of hope.
I think as we should. I mean, the cub has, again, shown its ability to adapt to the situation, and even though it's injured, we can't guarantee anything, of course, but it seems like it really does have a fighting chance in this situation. Naomi, what do you think? Oh, maybe you're on mute if you are speaking.
Mike, while we wait for Naomi, I just wanted to include that people have observed bears in the wild, or in bear habitats, walking on their rear legs, and so it's not something that that it has been observed, in other words, and I guess it just kind of lets us know that bears can persevere. They are able to have that adaptability.
Absolutely, yeah. They adapt to injury, to circumstance. We see that consistently at the river. They if they're injured, they'll hobble along as best they can, and they don't really have a choice. But yeah, some bears have learned they're some bears have learned to make a living just by walking on its hind legs. Wild bears, that is. That's not their preferred method of locomotion. They're not really designed to walk on hind legs for long distances, but they can do it if necessary. So again, that's not to say that this cub is going to experience a life just on hind legs. It may just need more time for its injuries to heal before it starts placing weight on its front legs. We just don't know how severe its injuries are or how long it'll take to heal. So yeah, thanks for that update, Susan. That was I think great for the audience to hear that. It seems to be mobile, making improvements day by day. Bears are so tough. We're looking at our live footage here of bears at the falls. It looks like maybe a few more salmon moving into the waterfall right now because we're seeing more success here. Again, one of the younger bears on the lip of the falls eating a salmon, being actually confronted by, it looks like a pair of older cubs, maybe wanting a little bit of a fish scrap. I think those might be 482, who is nicknamed Brett. I think those might be her 4-year-olds looking to get a little bit of that salmon from that bear that just moved out of our line of sight.
Yeah, they were on the lip a lot today. Sorry about that, guys. That's was a phone call about my salmon delivery coming from Naknek.
Okay.
So I'm
eat well.
I'm fishing.
Oh, maybe a bear on the underwater camera. At least I see a lot of debris in the vicinity. I don't know if I've missed it or not. But usually if you're watching the underwater camera and you see a lot of stuff getting kicked up, that means that there's a bear in the vicinity. So let's watch this and see if one happens to swim by. We're just going to see its feet or just a blob.
Or it could be a person.
Could be a person walking by. People do enter the river and walk to fish and things like that from time to time. So yeah, it looks like it passed. I was hoping we would get to see it. It's always a really fun view.
Good try, Mike.
Let's go back to the falls. Actually, no, it was a couple of bears because we can go to our Cat's River View camera and see a couple of bears in the vicinity. So yeah, the underwater camera, unique perspective on Brooks River. Check it out if you haven't done so before. Yeah, there's so much to talk about right now. I want to talk about, the live footage of the bears. I want to be able to show you the underwater camera of the bears. I also want to give everybody updates, though, on, again, one other bear that a cub that has been injured recently. This one by a run-in with a porcupine. So let me show you, as we see 482 and her 2 really giant cubs walking by just below the falls camera. Let me bring up 505, introduce you to 505 and her yearling. So this is them from early July, moving along the river. I recognize her by her sort of almost like a face that looks like a red fox to me. That's one of the ways I recognize her, sort of triangle-shaped ears in my opinion. And her cub looks somewhat like her too. But it was... Let's see, when was this? The 21st of July, I think we first caught a glimpse on the camera of the cub with quills in its paw, and not just 1 or 2, but a lot of quills. And then, people have been wondering, how is this cub going to be able to recover? Naomi, we were talking, during some of our play-by-plays that it seemed like it's quite likely that the cub would recover because we've seen instances like this before.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably painful, but it was moving around, it was eating, it was climbing hills, but we did, Holly's cub, who is now an independent subadult, 335, did the same thing and hobbled around like that for actually quite a long time, came back the next season, perfect shape, no limp, and this cub is doing really well, Mike.
Yeah, we're seeing it now placing weight on that left front paw. Not as much as sort of like the other one, but bears, again, they have immune systems. They have ways to deal with injuries, just like we do. The quills, I don't know if the quills ever work themselves out backwards. They're not designed to do that. They're barbed on a microscopic level, so they're designed to kind of work their way into whatever animal they're stuck with. And from the porcupine's perspective, that's what they want. They want animals to learn these lessons, and they're not necessarily designed. The quills aren't designed to cause fatal injury, but to teach an animal an important lesson. And a lot of young bears learn that lesson, and they probably don't ever get quills again. So we've been seeing the bear placing weight on that paw, visiting the falls with mom. This footage is from the 27th. Susan, have you been able to see this family in person recently?
No, I haven't, and I'm so glad that we're talking about it right now, because I have not had eyes on this sow and her cub. So I'm so happy to know that things are improving and that the cub is and I'll be interested to have eyes on it and over these next 2 days and see if I can see the cub and report on its progress.
Yeah, thanks for that. Anytime we can get updates from staff on the ground about things that the cameras maybe don't see, that's always appreciated. We have one other important update that we want to talk about before we conclude our broadcast today. But this, again, we're looking back at live footage of the falls. Some activity has shifted since we were talking about the cubs recently. We still got the same suite of bears on the lip of the falls. 503 still in the jacuzzi. 402 looks like she's caught a bear, or excuse me, caught a fish on the lip. And then we have a real big guy, one of the more dominant bears on the far side. Looks like 151 Walker over there, Naomi. And you can see how sort of like the far pool has almost cleared. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that's probably because of his presence.
I think you're probably right. Although now that's a bear whose number I don't know, but it's the big-eared bear that is nicknamed Ben. Is that 420?
43, no, something like that. Yeah.
Something I don't remember. But you can see that bear kind of circling, making a wide circle around 151. He's not going to try and get.
Yeah, they, again, they really are wary of each other. They know who is tolerant of their presence. They know who is not. And when they're near a bear or in the vicinity of a bear who is not tolerant of their presence, then they're quite acutely aware of how close they can get and what they need to do to avoid a confrontation.
And 503 maintaining his place in the jacuzzi.
Right now, I don't think anyone here would be really willing to challenge 503 for the jacuzzi. Walker, that's really not one of his spots. It seems like he's always on the far side. Occasionally, maybe on the lip of the falls. I don't consider him a jacuzzi bear, but like these other young adult males downstream of the falls, they're, I don't think they're large enough to challenge, or they don't quite have the disposition either to challenge 503 right now either. So I think 503 for the moment can probably enjoy some good fishing there. With the time remaining in our broadcast, though, Naomi and Susan, I want to talk about something that happened yesterday on the cameras, or 2 days ago, excuse me, not yesterday. That we have seen this bear last year, but it returned this year to everyone's surprise, because I really, honestly, did not think it was going to survive. Because there's a bear that we saw briefly last year that appeared to have a wire snare cinched around its neck, and trapping is prohibited within Katmai National Park, so it's highly likely that this bear wandered outside of the park boundaries, and that's where it got caught in the snare. Probably the snare was set for other animals, and the bear just happened to be a victim of it. Naomi, you were there as a ranger last summer, though. The rangers saw this bear, and as I understand it, they did make an effort to try to find the bear and to maybe even remove the snare.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about how rangers like Susan can see things on the ground that we don't see, and vice versa is true. Ranger Felicia and I were in our office in camp, and one of the moderators let me know that a cam viewer had seen this bear that looked like it had a snare around its neck. Excuse me. So we got a picture of it, and we went and found bear management, specifically Ranger Eric, and he agreed that it looked like a snare or some kind of human damage to that bear. So the bear management team made a major effort to find this bear. And I, like you, Mike, did not think this bear could have survived the winter. And so the team made some calls to King Salmon. They made sure that they had the equipment necessary to sedate the bear and remove that snare if they could find it. Then some of them went out by boat in the direction sort of towards where Margot Creek is, and they really hunted for that bear, but they didn't find it. And we're on the lookout for it for the rest of the season. But it is back now. And Susan, do you have a sense of what's planned if they can find this bear this year?
Yeah. Yes. So the first thing is once, there's a report that this bear is back, is back in the area, is just to confirm, have that confirmation that it is indeed the bear with the snare around is not confused as grass or fishing line. So confirmation is the first step, and then the park would definitely make a concerted effort, to make sure and have a plan and the resources to respond to this situation. But first and foremost, is the location of the bear and the ability, and therefore, once we know where the bear is, then the park can respond and offer that support to remove that snare.
Yeah, and this is, of course, different than with the cub. Park policies and allow for the park to remove that snare. Currently, park policy, again, if it's an ecosystem process, essentially, where like a bear injures another bear, then the park generally doesn't intervene. But if it's something like this, then then park policy is more lenient and allowing rangers to try to make that effort. The difficulty, though, is again finding a bear in this landscape. So this is live footage from Dumpling Mountain. The thing moving at the bottom is an airplane flying away from Brooks Camp. So if a bear's not on a lake shore, it's virtually impossible to find it if it's not in the river. And then but some rangers at the park who are still there worked with me when we were able to remove a snare from Divot. This is Divot in 2014 when she returned to Brooks Camp. This is my shaky handheld video camera footage of her with a wire snare cinched around her neck. We mobilized like a lot of people to try to help her, and thankfully she stuck around. It's not like this other bear that we saw yesterday that seemed to just kind of cruise through Brooks River and did it last year, just cruised through and kept on going. Divot's a bear that when she's at the river, she tends to stick around the river. So we were able to find her on the lake shore within a couple of days. And this is biologist Grant Hildebrand with the National Park Service about to shoot her with a tranquilizing dart so we can remove the snare. So hits her in the rump along the lake shore. In a normal situation, if he was just doing this for a tracking study, he said there's no way he would have tranquilized the bear next to the lakeshore. But since she was compromised and we were concerned for her life because of that wire snare, we thought that we could take that risk. But we were really concerned she was going to fall in the water and start to drown. But in the forest, there's no way we were going to find her. So thankfully, she fell down quietly on the beach. We were able to remove the wire snare. This is Sherry Anderson, former biologist at Katmai, putting some betadine antiseptic solution on her. And then this is Divot waking up from that saga of hers. The green stuff on her is just a dye. We applied a lip tattoo to the inside of her lip. Just in case she happens to die somewhere, it's fresh. We can, someone finds her in the off chance that happens. It's probably not likely that'll happen, but they can look on the inside of her lip and be like, hey, that's Divot. And then we'd have that information. But it took her a few hours to recover from that situation. So I feel I'm still kind of amazed that we were able to help divot, because again, the circumstances have to be just right. And it's almost impossible for those circumstances to come together. And I think with this bear, yeah, the Rangers are going to look, but yeah, again, I don't have high hopes, because this is not a bear that we know that tends to stick around Brooks River.
Yeah, but you know, the people who work at Brooks, and I mean, they care and they're concerned. And I know from last year that there was a really concerted effort. And as you showed with the rescue of Divot, it's not a simple task. So, you know, I know that they will be on the lookout, and if they can do something, they will for that bear.
Right. I know some people were also wondering too, especially in the context of our program that we did yesterday, where we were talking about the injured cub, and allowing that cub to sort of have a fighting chance to live its own life. And that's really what the national park is for. It's legislative. One of its legislative mandates is to provide habitat for high concentrations of brown bears. It's not feasible or possible to help every bear, and certainly, you know, with an injured cub, you know, you have to basically sedate the whole family, keep them sedated so they all kind of wake up at the same time. Then you have to protect the whole family from other bears during the few hours where they're hung over from those drugs. So it really is a philosophical decision by the park staff. In a sense, it's made not by the individual rangers necessarily at the river. It's made by legislation, park policy, things that are decided by people like in the Washington office in decades of precedent in these situations as well. And we know not everybody agrees with that, but I certainly agree with Naomi, and I know Susan can speak to this as well, that the people at the park care very deeply for the welfare of the bears. And we want people to care for the bears as well and work to help them. And Susan, this is one of the questions I've been asking people, my co-hosts, at the end of every broadcast, it seems like this year. But yeah, if people are looking to help bears at Brooks River, you know, how what's one idea that you have for them to go about that?
Do what you can do in terms of climate change, because our brown bear population and actually all living things are in fact are impacted by climate change. So whatever tangible change that you can make in your life, in your approaches to how you live your daily life, that can collectively, we can make that impact, that positive impact on climate change, so that we can protect these habitats, we can protect the ecosystems for wildlife and humans alike, and you can directly impact the overall quality of life that specifically these bears can have.
Absolutely. Can't echo that statement enough. Naomi, what about you?
Yeah, no, I think that I will echo it, because I think that being conscious of what kind of impact we have on climate change is of the utmost importance, because everything on this river is dependent upon the other part of the river. The salmon are keystone, and the flora and the fauna of this healthy ecosystem can't stay that way if things are out of balance because of climate change. And warming oceans are a significant problem, and are already impacting the salmon that come to Bristol Bay, which feed into this river. So our use of fossil fuels, our carbon footprint, that's affecting the temperature of the ocean. And salmon are very, very sensitive to temperature, and that we're all already seeing changes. So what you do at home has an effect on these bears and the life on this river.
Well, thanks for those thoughts. And I think that's a great point to end our broadcast on today. I want to thank my two co-hosts for sharing their time and their expertise with me. Naomi Boak with the Katmai Conservancy, and of course, Park Ranger Susan Contreras at Katmai National Park. Naomi and Susan will be back online tomorrow at what time? 7 p.m. Eastern time for a broadcast about those teenage bears of the Brooks River, the subadults. So join them for that broadcast. It'll certainly be informative and fun for everybody. My name is Mike Fitz with Explore.org. Thanks for watching. And until I talk to you again, enjoy the bears. And as we like to say at Explore, never stop learning.